Hello, hello. It's Jo Brett here with Dr. Liz Corcoran, and we're going to be talking tonight about anxiety. Welcome. We've got 15 who've joined us already. Thank you for joining us. I hope those of you that saw that nice, relaxing little bit of music and scenery enjoyed that. I'm once again very excited to introduce Dr. Liz Corcoran for those of you that don't already know her. She's going to give us an overview of what anxiety is and how it presents differently in children and adults, and talk a little bit about support. We've got 2 weeks of support for children and others suffering with anxiety that we're starting this week at Star Jumps. And thank you for joining us. So, Liz, would you like to introduce yourself?
I would. Hi, everybody. My background and why I was more than happy to introduce this week into anxiety is that some of you may know, before I did functional medicine, after I completed medical school, I decided to specialize in psychiatry because I was interested in why people do the things they do. I wanted to help those who were struggling with mental health problems. And it probably, it definitely would color the way I do functional medicine, because I want to help people make changes. And actually at the heart of psychiatry is often change and helping people change. So a lot of psychiatry is helping people make sense of their world, making meaning of their struggles, and helping them really identify what they're going through, put words to their feelings, and help them find a way through, and their children, their family, because often we aren't just single, sole individuals. We have our family, our network, our community, and all the waves of people that support us, and we support them. So yeah, I was more than happy to kick off this week about anxiety and really kind of, I suppose, lay the groundwork. So maybe we dispel some myths and we understand a little bit more deeply about what anxiety is and what it isn't, and how maybe things look a little bit different with kids. So yeah, no, happy to be here tonight, Jo. And yes, as always, we go live because that means that we can interact with you guys in real time. So questions that you have, put into the comment box, and Jo will feed them across to me, and we can talk about them. And if we didn't answer the question that you had, come back into the comment box and say, well, actually, I wasn't quite sure. So, please use the fact that we're live to interact with us, because we love it. We love feeling you there. Definitely, we need that, don't we? More contact and more human interaction at the moment.
Absolutely. And hello to all of you that have said hello.
So, I kind of thought it would be good if we think a little bit about anxiety and, what do we mean by anxiety? Because actually, there's the normal kind of gamut of human emotions, right? And anxiety's in there, but then there's the fact that anxiety is sort of treated as a diagnosis as well. It's treated as something that's an illness. So there's that kind of, well, what is the distinction, and what do we mean when we talk about, I'm anxious, or they're anxious, they're on pills, or, I'm very anxious with what's going on, that kind of thing. So I thought that might be a good place to start, really. So when we think about anxiety, I mean, obviously, it's fear, dread. I mean, there's a kind of lovely sort of list of words that easily come to the mind at the moment. I don't know about you, Jo.
Yeah, I think so.
Just turn on the TV for a few minutes and, the news. I don't know how they manage to generate so much content 24 hours a day to feed that anxiety monster inside. Yeah, fear. So, actually at the heart of it, anxiety is a totally normal response. And it's a normal response to a sort of abnormal stimulus, right? So you are out in the cave and you hear a rustle and it's a saber-toothed tiger or something coming to threaten you and threaten your tribe. And inbuilt in us, all of us, is the wiring in our biology, our bodies and our minds to respond quickly, almost faster than our thinking kind of frontal lobes can kind of deal with, quickly mobilize our bodies and get ready to run. So fight or flight, right? We all kind of know that. So it's actually protected us for a long, long time, because here humans are still around and there's no saber-toothed tigers. So we've actually done quite well having these inbuilt mechanisms. And if we think about just the kind of normal list of things that come with that fight, that fright, that fear, I mean, our heart rates shooting up, blood pressure going up, sweaty. How you doing, Joe? You feeling those anxiety? Yeah, I've got it.
Dry mouth.
Yeah. You know, when we were waiting to come on to speak to you all, we thought, well, let's put some nice relaxing music that will help us, that will help anyone who's maybe getting kind of winding down to listen to our talk, to kind of do some deep breathing, because that's one of the first things. You start breathing shallow and you start maybe sometimes feeling a little bit short of breath. And your muscles start to feel a bit tingly because you're getting ready to run or to fight the challenge. So the fight or flight. And some additional symptoms, which anyone who's had to sit an exam or had an interview know, that, you know, you're running to the toilet. That's another part of anxiety. So it can affect all parts of our body. And like I said, it allows us to respond to a threat. So, you know, I think it's important to acknowledge that it's there, respect the biology, it's protected us. The problem comes, obviously, is when the situation's over, but the anxiety is not. So when you're still struggling with that anxiety symptoms, the feeling that the dread, the feeling that you, your heart's racing, you're clammy, you're short of breath. Sometimes when you're breathing fast as well, you can start to get tingling feeling from the hyperventilating. So yeah, it's a lot of symptoms of anxiety are actually in the body. And GPs know that, because when someone presents to them with symptoms, when they rule out more sort of, you know, acute serious causes like heart problems, anxiety is on the list. They understand that often people will have those bodily symptoms before they realize that actually there's a, you know, maybe a fear or some kind of threatening situation that they're experiencing inside their mind. So it sometimes can be difficult because you know, you're having those physical symptoms, but you haven't quite connected it to a certain scenario. So I don't know, Joe, if you've ever had a situation or someone maybe that you meet. I often have this sometimes at the school gates, someone you talk to, and every time you come away from talking to them, you feel short of breath, a little bit stressed out, tight in the chest. Sometimes people can evoke these symptoms in us. Have you ever noticed that?
Absolutely. And I think one thing we posted out before this week was that anxiety is contagious, and also calmness, being calm, is also contagious. So I think that's very, very true. Very true indeed.
Yeah. And
Liz,
you know,
can I just say, I don't know if it's when you're touching your wires for your headset, but there's kind of crackling.
Is that better?
It's not making a noise now. I'll let you know when it happens. Yeah,
okay.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. It could be my scarf was hitting it. So yeah, sorry. Yeah. So, you know, I think when we think about like anxiety and what might provoke anxiety in all of us, it's going to be slightly different. And obviously a situation like what we're going through now is, I mean, when I was preparing for this talk, I think that we're in it. Obviously, you know, it's like a once in a lifetime please, God willing, situation, right? I was thinking back, maybe the last time it was something that affected me personally was something like 9/11, where you felt things were going to be different. You weren't sure of what the future was going to hold. And I think that, acknowledging, first of all, that what we're all going through is an element of an adjustment reaction, that it actually is extremely normal for us to be experiencing the levels of anxiety that we are at the moment. And so I want to sort of put that out and really help normalize a lot of what people are experiencing. I mean, I talked about it briefly last week when I was saying that we are kind of experiencing a new normal, but that to be aware that that our anxiety is in the background running quite high. We a lot of us, because of the nature of the threat, even though it isn't going to come banging at our door, it's sort of this amorphous fear that it can be hard to understand how it applies to you, your family, your child, the things that are important to you and your immediate surroundings. So a lot of what we're experiencing now is very normal. It's not to diminish the struggles that each person's going through, because it is hard. It is very hard. But I suppose through this week, one of the things we want to do is maybe put more tools in your toolkit and help you to feel, oh, I can feel that thing that Dr. Liz was talking about on Wednesday night. I can feel that feeling coming up again. Let me just try that breathing technique that they talked about, and begin to try to practice these things. It is difficult to learn these things when you're in the middle of it. It can be hard to, with my patients, I used to talk about practicing these techniques so that when you're in the stressful situation, you're already practiced, you've got the wiring going in your brain already, and you can begin to use those new tools in the stressful situations when you need them. And that's what I do in clinic when I was dealing with kids that had diagnosed issues around anxiety. Now we're in the situation, we can't flip the switch and make it go away, but we are relatively blessed because we're in safe, confined situations. So now is a good time to begin to try and learn these practices, the breathing, the affirmations that we're going to be sharing on Star Jump's page, and do it in front of your kids. Yeah. Let them see you do them, model them. Yeah, because there's nothing more powerful that those kids are going to remember, that when mom started to get into a bit of a panic, she sat down with me and we put on that nice relaxing spa music and we did some of that breathing or the tapping. Yeah, because there's so much to be said for the way we model for our children different ways to cope with things. And sometimes it requires us to be brave and admit that maybe we didn't know these things before. That's fine. Okay, we are in an extremely unique situation. So there is no shame in actually, saying, I don't know how to deal with this. Because, even at Star Jumps, we are learning, we're supporting each other, and we're figuring this out for you and sharing everything that we know with you so that we can move forward together as a community, really.
Absolutely. Liz, could you say a little bit about how it presents in children, anxiety? Because sometimes it can present quite differently. And after that, we've had a great question on a presentation of anxiety in a child and how that can be helped. And I'll bring that to you after you've just introduced anxiety and how it presents.
Okay, so in children, I think it's important to, like I said, it's important to understand that a lot of what we're experiencing, it's still in the realms of a normal emotion. So I definitely don't want to sort of concern anyone that what I might talk about is sort of automatically labeling your child as having a diagnosis. We're not going there. This is a Facebook Live. So when you think about your kids and the way they might present with anxiety, we would think about different age ranges and thinking about what's normal for children of different ages. So, with your younger infants, and they maybe would go through a stage where they're afraid to be away from you. So at the moment, that's kind of I would actually say my 4-year-old is experiencing a little bit of that as well. I can't be upstairs and she's downstairs. And I think at the moment it is normal to see a little bit of regression with kids in terms of that. They're needing a little bit more reassurance. They're wanting to be near to us a bit more because it is an uncertain situation. They're aware that there is something going on, but they can't quite understand the level of risk or danger that maybe we can, and explaining it to them is difficult. There's a number of materials which we can share through the week about how to explain feelings and anxiety to kids. So older kids, they may act out. So you may see them uncertain about what's happening, like, everyone's acting strange. Why is dad at home? They might begin to have tantrums, or because they might not have the language development yet to be able to express to you, why they're frightened or they don't like learning at school. You may see them be more defiant. So, come on, let's do, the lesson that your teacher sent. No, I don't want to. I hate you. I hate school. And see this sort of refusal and pushing back basically against what you're trying to do with them. And as I said, again, you might see regression as well. So you might see accidents, toilet accidents, things like that. So that, is within the realm of, expressing anxiety as a child. That's, not unexpected. Older kids, really, it's again the level of language. So what you're going to see with older kids is really dependent on, you would know as a parent how mature they are and how able they are to describe to you what their fears are. But they can also be angry, be sullen, be withdrawn. As with adults, showing anxiety can also be exclusively in the body. So your kids with sore tummies, headaches, that sort of sweaty, nervous feeling in the hands, that might be all that your child might display. So it is very diffuse, and I know it can be difficult. Trust your parent instinct, trust your gut, because you have been with this child longer than anyone else. You are the world expert in that child. And so your intuitive instinct that this may be anxiety, obviously double check it's not a tummy bug. Once you've ruled that out, start talking about, do you think maybe you might feel a bit worried about what's happening at the moment? Do you want to talk about it more? No. Okay. Well, you can talk anytime you like with me. Why don't, and then maybe you can take them into a creative activity that might allow them to express their anxiety through art or through play. Play is a huge doorway into the child's mind, and it's where they do their business, right? So we can talk things out as adults, but kids need to play things out. They need to figure out their world through play. So that is a kind of very broad picture of how children may display anxiety. And, with our family patients and family of young people who come to Star Jumps who have additional diagnosis, it can become a bit more tricky. So we can cover that later in the week, where we can talk a little bit how anxiety might display in some of our kids who are not neurotypical.
If it's an okay moment to bring in a couple of questions about children. So there was a great question about from a mum whose son's heart rate is typically very fast. Mm-hmm. And when he was a baby, the doctor recommended his heart rate was so fast that he needed to go for testing, but he was actually fine. but it's still fast now and it's frequently fast. And she's asking about him being stuck in this mode. He also has sensory processing difficulties. And we know at Star Jumps, we see a lot of children who have sensory processing difficulties, and these can trigger a fight, fight, fear, fight, fight, freeze response. And they can become very stuck in a more hyper aroused state. And that's where your practices about rewiring and doing frequent practices of things can really help to calm things down. And next week we've got Anya Kennedy will be with me, and we'll be talking about activities for children who are experiencing this. And also Lou Whitehorn has done a lovely toolkit for parents. But I don't know if you want to comment on that as well, Liz.
I mean, getting out of a sympathetic state can be difficult, particularly for our kids who have maybe some different wiring. And and also with my functional medicine hat on, I would want to make sure that they weren't being exposed to anything that's stimulating their immune system, because sometimes we note as well when people eat foods that they actually have antibodies against, the heart rate goes up. So there is this, always interplay between the mind and the body. So doing work with kids that might be in a situation like this little young man, you have to be really creative, because, how many little boys want to sit down and sort of meditate for an hour? It's very few, probably. So you need to think about creative ways to use their vagal nerve. The vagal nerve is parasympathetic, so it's the other side of the coin. It's rest and relax. And it's activated by things like gargling, singing, humming. So other activities that might help this child swap over into a parasympathetic state would really be worth considering, as well as thinking about obviously anything that might be of sort of alerting the immune system to increase the heart rate. But there's really interesting kind of research coming out about heart rate variability, and other functional medicine practitioners using heart rate variability as a way to measure health and measure people's vasculature and neurological health as well. So, it might be worth looking into heart rate variability as well. I don't know if the research is there yet with kids, but it's an interesting way to look at what is it doing all the time? Is it actually dropping down and into periods where it can go down and the rest and relaxed state, and then actually whenever you go to near to someone, then that shoots up again. So some of the work around wearable heart rate monitors, and for women like rings that can monitor, I think they're going to be very interesting to understand whether or not it is a situation where someone's alert all the time, or whether actually, no, there are times where you can be calm, but it's just the actual measuring of the blood pressure sometimes sends things through the roof, doesn't it?
It does. Some of the work that we've been doing as occupational therapists with the Sensory Attachment Organisation with Aideen. They're starting to look at working with parents and children in a therapy space, in a safe therapeutic space, where there are lots of activities that can help with regulation, such as resistance, pulling, pushing, lifting, or rocking, vestibular type, gentle, calming movements. But with the child wearing a heart monitor, and actually the parent as well. And
interesting.
The heart rates show on the video that you take of the session, so you can see not only if an activity might have dysregulated and caused a child to become more anxious, or helped a child to become less anxious and calm into the parasympathetic nervous system, or if it's some sort of interaction as well. If there's something maybe that mum says without realizing that that's actually a trigger for the child to feel, oh, I'm not doing this very well, or So that's
Definitely.
really interesting. Yeah.
And, there's 100 sort of like micro signals and things we are putting off all the time. And, that a mom can just give it a look to the kid on the other side of the room. That's an exaggerated form. Sometimes just a twitch of an eyebrow and a spouse can know. There is that constant communication between us and our child. And I think this moves very kind of nicely into that idea of, regulating yourself and
Absolutely.
learning these techniques and being aware of your role. You're piloting this family ship. You can help by extension, just by helping yourself. And to please don't feel embarrassed or ashamed if you feel, I've lost it again, it's another write off of a day. That's okay. Please, you are in good company. I am trying
Yes.
my best too. And I have plenty of days where we just sort of say that, okay, let's just write off Tuesday, start again Wednesday. And each day the sun rises again and we try again. And children are resilient and forgiving creatures. So you be forgiving to yourself and give yourself another chance, just, to learn a new technique, to learn a new way to calm your inner child, your inner panic and world. And the waves will go outward to your child. You will be able to pass on these techniques for sure.
Yes. Just by tuning into how your body's feeling and simple things like breathing, and your
Yeah.
child listening to your breathing rate slow down, they will start to follow you. And you're just being in the moment and playing with your child, just following their lead, not putting any pressure on yourself or the child to do anything more than just, be in the moment. So,
and sometimes homeschool teachers can take a mental health day. That's okay.
yeah,
if you need to take a sick day and say, okay, there's no school today, that's fine. But actually, your primary job at the moment is to, keep everyone as well as you can. And sometimes that means you can't do long division today. That's okay. What we're going through, exams have been canceled, weddings have been canceled. Your child will catch up.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Another question we have is, have you experienced and had any thoughts on how children, after all this time on screens, don't want to be in front of anyone? I asked, I don't know if what was meant by not in front of anyone. I don't know if anyone can enlighten me on, I'm just seeing, I'm not in front of anyone or dad.
Maybe not wanting social contact, or
yeah, maybe is that what, I don't know if you can comment in the box, is that what you wanted, not wanting to be with people, just wanting to be on screens?
it's you can think a little bit about the screen in terms of what it does to all of us, not just kids. It gives us a buzz. Okay, so you're getting dopamine, you're getting a hit from neurotransmitters because it's a novel, changing stimulus. And parents as well, just to be aware, multitasking does the same thing. It gives you a buzz. That's a sort of similar way that the news feed works, that just constant stimulus and interest. And when, for some children, depending on their genes and depending on, their makeup, they can find it difficult to detach from that. So when you cut off someone's supply of dopamine, as in you cut off their stimulus that's creating it, they can go into a bit of a shutdown. So, I mean, if, I haven't checked my genes, but I wonder whether I've got some dopamine, because if someone tries to take my phone away from me, there can be a little bit of rattiness and grumpiness. And my son has he has trouble coming off of his screen. So when he's coming from a game into dinner time, he has to have, like I said, you need to be aware of yourself. So if your child's younger, obviously you can't have that conversation with them yet. So there is a way you could try. You come alongside the child and you join with them on the screen activity. You ask them what's happening. So you basically begin an interaction with them through the screen. And then slowly you said, okay, well, let's see if we can finish this, because now it's time for us all to go and eat, and show me how you can finish this game. So you kind of triangulate your interaction through the screen as a way to help end the screen time. But for some children, ending it cold turkey will trigger tantrums because of that cutoff of dopamine.
Also, scientists who are, creating the online world that we live in, they research to see how to help us to become addicted with dopamine. Just to go back to that question, it was to do with not wanting social time. I think you touched on it. And also a 7-year-old it is, and he's in online classes once an hour every hour, or very intense online classes. So when he's finished,
I wouldn't want to talk to anybody after that. I don't know, the parent concerned, I don't know if you've seen, there's been articles shared, and obviously it's just anecdotal people talking about Zoom fatigue, which, it has there's a sort of grounding in a real, in science, in terms of like, it is overwhelming. You're managing the screen, you're getting a feedback from the technology itself, and multiple. When you are in a meeting, you only are looking at one person at a time and reading their facial action. You're trying to read, do they like my proposition? Do they not? Am I getting told off by the boss? In Zoom meetings, it's generally multiple faces, multiple different feet. It's overwhelming for your neurological system. So, you can imagine, you're having sort of multiple over kind of stimulus that you would have at a normal meeting. So I can only imagine for a child who yet doesn't have the complexity in terms of their wiring yet to deal with that, because we're struggling as adults, and we have our wiring, it has less connectivity than theirs. They have more connections in their brain at that age. They get pared down and made a little bit more efficient as they move through into adulthood. So, you've got to imagine that that might not be, honestly, maybe this is worth an email to the head. Actually, is this good for their neurology? I know that maybe some parents are anxious that we continue with the curriculum, and particularly maybe if you're at a private school and you're paying, there's maybe a sort of pressure that they've got to keep the goods coming, the students, and keep everybody happy. But you always have to weigh that against the mental health of the students, and the the fact that this is a unique situation. This isn't just everyone's on holiday at home, so we've got to stream lessons through. So I hope that kind of gives you some food for thought and some explanation to maybe why that your child's feeling a bit cut off after those meetings. Just let them go outside as long as it's not raining. Try and kind of bring down the dopamine and ground themselves again.
That's great. Thanks, Liz. We've got some great interaction going on in the comments. People supporting each other. Thank you, especially to Rosie Blackman, who has been on all our lives. Rosie's a parent we know well, and she's our #1 fan at the moment. I just wanted to give a shout out to her. On Facebook, she's come up as our #1 fan. So I hope you're not overdosing on dopamine, Rosie. But there's some comments from her to support other questions. I'm just going back to see if you want to carry on, and I'll bring you the next question. Yeah.
So I did want to talk a little bit about, this is a unique situation, and we are having a worldwide adjustment reaction to what's going on. And that's actually, that would be the sort of official term to describe what we're going through. And that, it's normal, or, to have issues around at the moment. Problem solving, trying to decide what to have for dinner feels like trying to decide what property you're going to buy. Like big decisions, but actually the small decisions, but you just feel unable to cope with decisions at the moment. Totally normal. Yeah. Go, wind it right back to basics. Pros, just take it very easy at the moment, and don't put pressure on yourself that you are not adulting, or to beat yourself up, because that's totally expected based on what we're going through. And Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, don't want to interrupt, but there's a question on how to balance with teenagers the need for them to do some decent work at the moment and not pushing them too hard. That's
You're not going to ask me about teenagers. We didn't cover that in psychiatry. No. Tricky. Really, teenager, adolescence is a very broad category. Anything from people, little ones that are just at the beginning of their journey, through to ones that are actually technically, some classify it up to 24. Adolescents up to 24. So adolescents, they're going through this stage where they want to be individuals. They want to do their own thing. They know they're dependent on you. They hate the fact they're dependent on you because they want to be individual, but they're dependent on you. So they're back and forth between the two. And the closest analogy to it is toddlers. So they help me. No, I do it. I would say whenever I talk to parents who are struggling with teenagers, and not to diminish the difficulties that they're going through, but they try to now and again imagine your toddler, that teenage in front of you that's struggling. Imagine them as a toddler. So they're going through a similar sort of psychological. They want to be individuals and be identified with their peers, but they know they still need you.
Have you got any suggestion for how to help them with their anxiety and to give them some space? Sorry, I interrupted you.
No. Yeah. So, really, it's tricky with them. I find often talking with teenagers face to face can be, particularly with boys, can be hard. So side on side. So say, can you help me do an activity? You're shoulder to shoulder, and then begin the conversation, talking. They don't feel attacked. They don't feel you're putting them in the corner or you're picking on them about something again. Share about your own teenage years, and draw out their curiosity. Help them to feel, again, safe. And often, sharing a funny story about when you were a teenager can help to bring down the confrontation. Maybe there's a good book, How to Talk So Teens Will Listen, and Listen So Teens Will Talk, full of helpful advice. But offer maybe to pay for them to download an app that helps them with meditation, to learn meditation. Ask them, rather than say, do you want to, say, I've heard that these 3 apps are good. Do you want to try one of them? Yeah. So you're not questioning whether or not they're going to do it or not. But you're offering them a choice of which one they might like to try. If they're not so embarrassed of your presence, do it together. If they're at the stage where they, cringe when you walk in the room, enable them to be able to have access to these materials and help them, I suppose, as much as you can to weather the storm, because as much as they're pushing you away, they need your connection. And it's a really tough stage because they're hungry for independence and separation, but they're so desperate to be liked and to be accepted and to be okay. So it is a very tricky time. And hugs, Mom.
If they'll let you.
Well, yeah, we're hugging you. We're hugging you because we know it is.
Oh,
I
see.
Hard.
Sorry, hugs to Mum. Yes,
and Dad.
I know my teenagers, or some of my teenagers, wouldn't allow that at the time, and would be
Mom.
Really over responsive. If I was just having a sort of serious expression on my face, they would think I was angry. They're very hyper reactive to those kind of things, aren't they?
Yeah.
And
it's all of that wiring. Right? So there's just roadmaps all over the place that the workmen are going in and cutting and reconnecting and changing, and their hormones are flying this way and that way, and they're finding it very difficult to sort of control the dimmer switch. So your kind of disapproval, was that disapproval? It's felt very keenly because you are their safe place, and it is very hard because when all you're getting is rejection from them and all they need is unconditional acceptance, it is a very hard line to walk. You will pass through the other side. As I said, humans have made it this far. We can do this, people. But I mean, thoughts and prayers go up to people in isolation with teenagers.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. Another comment is that some children who have dual diagnosis of autism and ADHD are using the technology to escape a bit. And while it's positive, at home they're trying to manage that, but in a way it's proving to be helpful. Some other comment about regression, that there's a lot of toilet accidents going on. And somebody has said about visual timetables, actually it's Rosie, and social stories, which are great. And Liz Van Gran, our specialist and lead speech and language therapist, who's making some comments here on the comment section, is going to be doing a talk about how to use things like social stories and visual aids, and how to talk with children who've got communication and language difficulties about their feelings and to help them with those. So
definitely. I mean, we understand that bridging that gap and helping your child, just like everything, you are describing their world to them from the moment they're born, and you're taught, oh, aren't you gorgeous? Look at that smile. Oh, that thing I did, that was a smile. And it's crazy, but that is what we're doing. We label the world for them, and this is exactly the same. And at the moment, like I talked about last week, a lot of us are sort of swinging back and forth between the shock and sort of frozen stages of grief. That is, understandable. And as you try to maybe do some of the exercises and work that we're going to share with you guys through the next 2 weeks, you'll be on a journey as well, hopefully guiding you gently from that sort of shock and kind of frozen state into like, okay, I can do this. I can help explain what my child's feeling to them. I can help use this picture. I can, and you can do this, everybody. And we're here. We've got your back.
Yes. Also, another comment when we were talking about the heart rate monitor, you can get little ones that go on fingers that you can put on before and after an activity. And we've worked with children where they've been exploring different activities that might help them. For example, one little boy, he really liked doing the mindful colouring in, and he'd put the monitor on before and after, and would find it quite interesting himself to see that helped him, and so that can be really good.
And their generation, I mean, their interaction their interaction with technology will be extremely helpful for them in terms of understanding mindfulness and what this does.
That's just reminded me of something that Anya and I were going to explore. It's called Mightier, that one of our families use. And it's a game that links with a heart rate monitor. So the child plays games, and by calming down their nervous system, which is picked up through the monitor, it helps the game to play differently.
Wow.
And so, I know. So we must get some of those, but it's called Mightier, and they're available online. I'll put a note in the comments about those.
I think through the course of researching for this, the ads on my Facebook have become targeted. So I've seen an advert for an app that's around regulation and some techniques, but at the subscription cost is very expensive. So we're going to keep looking, and when we find these useful things, we'll share them with you.
Yeah, this one isn't you get a tablet with it, and I think it's quite good value.
Affordable, great.
Yeah. So we've got a question. A daughter diagnosed with autism, a perfectionist with high anxiety at 99.8% when saw Dr. Siggers. Worrying about the virus and homeschooling, goes from calm to angry in the blink of an eye, either poring over her work until it's perfect or refusing altogether. So how can she be helped to have her emotions remain more stable, to have a happier household? Tried breathing, trampolining, talking.
Very tricky.
Yeah.
Very tricky. And young ladies like that can sometimes be some of the most tricky to try. But be, her strengths sound like her intelligence, her ability to think about her work. So that would be perhaps where you might want to start, is around psychoeducation, and maybe helping her talk about the anger volcano. And although there's she's saying she goes from calm to angry. In reality, there is going to be cues that she is either bodily ignoring, filtering out, because she's learned to filter into certain different things. So what you're going to have to do is probably take her on a bit of a journey of becoming more somatic aware, so more aware of her body, which we'll talk a bit about some of these techniques later in the week in terms of, 3 things you can feel, 3 things you can see. So beginning to home her sensitivity. So beginning to awaken her senses to what she's feeling inside and what she's experiencing outside, and putting words to things. So what you're going to want to do is help her to, I suppose, pinch and zoom those moments. So when she's feeling angry, you tell her, explain to her, we're going to pinch and zoom. So we're going to learn, where are the clues, right? Well, I think, Mummy, I did actually start to feel a bit tight here when I couldn't do that right, when I couldn't do that math problem right. I started to feel like someone was sitting on my chest. So there is clues there, but you may have to help her to train her inner awareness, her bodily awareness a bit more. And her strengths will be in her corner in terms of helping her do that. So that's probably the kind of approach I might take with a young lady like that.
Sometimes keeping a sort of journal yourself,
definitely,
of what's happening, and if there's a particular time of day, or even if she may have eaten some certain foods that make it, like you were talking about, Liz, the vagal tone that might be triggering a more anxious response in the body, can be really helpful then to see patterns and then think, well, what could we change to make this better? And also talking to her as well about it, like you're saying, this would be really good. I'm very aware that we're at our 45 minutes, but if you're okay, Liz, do you want to just answer the questions we've got here? There's a question about another teenager, a boy with a dual diagnosis of autism and ADHD, and how to encourage him outside of the house. He's very reluctant to leave, and his mum is worried that he literally won't see any daylight. So that's
okay. So I'd probably, I'd kind of, in those situations, it's tricky because like when I was working the learning disabilities unit and I was working with children with autism, yes, some of the young adults were housebound, and obviously that is a real fear, I'm sure, for some parents who have children on the spectrum. So, trying things, leverage points, trying to see what does he love, what does he enjoy, and actually then making an activity that might be worked into short burst outside. So let's go outside and get some twigs for this activity, or let's go and try and maybe work in some kind of quick burst, because anything around anxiety, when you're treating something that's a diagnosed condition like a phobia, you often can do something like a graded exposure, and that works even when it's not a sort of diagnosed condition. If you're nervous about something, doing it in small incremental steps can sometimes help to take the fear out of it. The more you avoid something, the more your body is wired to think this is something to avoid, and you're rewarded by avoiding it further. So you sort of begin to hardwire that. So if you can maybe think a little bit about what does he love, and how you might incorporate either things from the outside into the inside, maybe exploring whether or not there is some underlying fear. I don't know this child's level of understanding on learning disability, but there may be some misunderstanding that he thinks he might get sick if he goes outside. So sometimes children can make 1 and 1 and get to 4. So it can be tricky to try and get to the underlying maybe thoughts or beliefs or ideas that are underneath behaviors, but it is definitely worth exploring and doing a bit of activity around that, seeing if you can flesh out why maybe he's nervous about going outside. Gosh, any other ideas, Joe?
Would Tonya, one of our occupational therapists at Star Jumps, has just helpfully posted that sometimes strong sensations can be used to sort of tip intense emotions away from distress. She suggested putting hands or face, or touching ice with hands or face, or using strong mints, or actually it can be a pull push, type of activity, hanging from monkey bars, doing something that's quite a strong, intense body experience or sensory thing can be helpful. So we've had a question, do we have any suggestions on resources? We've got loads.
Yes, we are gonna fill you up with resources the next 2 weeks.
Absolutely. As Rosie suggested, there are lots of great apps such as Peace Out, Smiling Minds, Headspace, good apps for children and parents. We've got lots lined up for this week where there'll be a lot more information coming out. So if you keep checking in with our events page, and also if you've got our newsletter, there's a bit of a program in there about what's coming up. If you want to email info@starjumps, we can send the newsletter out to you. But just to let you know, next week on Thursday, we've got Dr. Georgie Siggers, our consultant paediatrician. She's going to be talking about children who have dual diagnosis of anxiety and autism. And sorry, see, my brain's melting after all this technology. She's going to be talking about children with a dual diagnosis of autism and ADHD or single diagnosis, and how anxiety might present for them, and then answer questions on it. So it's going to be just a short talk about that, and then an opportunity for people to come with questions. We've got a play therapist, Pete Nord, who's going to give some demonstrations of activities to help with calm. We've got Liz Van Gran doing something on communication and language difficulties and how to talk. We've got a toolkit on simple things, 15 simple things parents can do, from Lou Whitehorn and myself. We've got Anya Kennedy doing an activity-based sensory type of session where she's going to be looking at sensory processing and activities to help calm the nervous system. There's so many different things we've got coming up, and we've got lovely things being posted every day. A beer, thank you. A beer tomorrow is going to do at 2:30 a yoga session here on Facebook, which will be live, or you can watch it afterwards. And it's aimed at children, but it's lovely for parents to do with their child as well. And then after these 2 weeks, she's going to be doing another talk on diet and what might be good to look at for children who might have difficulties with their gut health that's affecting their learning and development. And that's reminded me another thing to add, that as we're feeling this is such an important time for us to think about our health, our mental health and our physical health and our immunity, we are doing a really special offer for May and June, where if you wanted to have a consultation with Liz, who's here tonight, we're offering £100 off. That's about 30% off. Yeah.
Good deal.
I know. And also 20% off any bookings with Abir, our clinical nutritionist, as well. So we just feel this is a really important time. While children are not going to school, it's an opportunity to change diets where you can see what they're doing all day long, and to do lifestyle and diet type changes that either Liz or Abir might recommend, that can really have an incredible impact on your child's function, their health, their development, their learning, their ability to concentrate, and, helping with calming anxiety, which is, our topic of the night.
Yes, definitely.
So Nicola has asked if we're covering anything on PDA. I will ask Dr. Sis, that's pathological demand avoidance. Shall we leave that to next week, Liz, or do you want to say anything on that?
Yeah, it probably fits most closely with what Dr. Georgie's going to cover.
Yes, I'll ask
But
that.
yeah, like it, kids with who have diagnosis, it can be challenging. It doesn't always have to be challenging with anxiety. Like I said, you find a child's strengths and you build on them, and that is humanity is home as a whole. That is the way all of us learn. You build on the strengths and you go from there. And the children, just because children have other diagnoses, it doesn't mean that they're beyond help, or that the normal help won't affect them or give them relief. So stick with us. We can come up with some ideas and help you think around different sort of solutions and maybe ways to help your child communicate their internal state and help them to make a bridge to you so that they can express what they're going through. Yeah.
So somebody's asked when our next live is. We've got an event section on our Facebook page where we will post things. The next definite date we have for a live is next week on Wednesday with Anya, and then on the Thursday next week, Dr. Siggers, and Dr. Siggers will be talking at 8:00. I need to confirm the time, Anya, and we'll be doing some talks which will just be posted on the page, which may not be live talks, but if you want to ask questions underneath those, we will go back in and look at them and respond to your questions. And if you've got any further questions you want to email info@starjumps, we can do our best.
And I'll try to watch the comments on this video as well and come back and answer any questions that people post after tonight. We'll do our best to follow up on. But I just wanted to sort of throw in there that I know that, we've talked about this before, that each of us bring our own wounds. Each of us have our things from the past that that we carry within us. And, like I said, this situation is, unprecedented, and what we're all going through is actually normal, and that if you are struggling with it, it might be because you didn't maybe get a full toolkit of coping mechanisms, and that's okay. You can learn, you can integrate and sort of learn new skills and new ways, and you can then pass that on to your kids. Just begin to be aware of maybe how you deal with anxiety. How are you coping with things? And, in a kind way, as you would to a friend, talk to yourself, think a little bit about maybe whether or not you got helpful coping mechanisms or maybe some unhelpful ones. If you have a voice in your head telling you you're pathetic, you should try better. What are you whining about? Why are you crying? That is unhelpful voices, probably from the past. And, getting help and maybe finding a friendly ear who you can share some of that with will help you to realize that maybe you can cope with things a bit different, that people are there and ready to support you and help you through this time. And also just like a plea to be aware that like anxiety is catching, and sometimes the people that we've caught it from, we interact with a lot, and just maybe moderate your exposure to those people right now. Just keep it short. If every time you speak to that particular person, you come off the phone feeling tight in the chest, clammy, like your life's out of control, maybe just reduce the amount of time that you expend exposed to those people right now, because you've got a finite reserve, and give yourself permission to save that for yourself and your family, your immediate family that's in your charge and care. So just kind of wanted to give you guys permission to minimize your exposure to some of these people that might pass on a different kind of bug at the moment.
Had a lovely comment from Rosie. She says she feels better already. Thank you, Rosie. Thank
I want to meet
you.
this lady.
Oh, I think you will. I think I'm inviting her on. I've been texting her earlier to say we need Rosie.
Good.
She's an expert. Well, actually, that's another thing to say.
Yeah, teach us.
We're all experts,
Definitely.
and what we can learn from each other and from all of you watching is amazing, and it's lovely to be able to share things. And thank you all for joining us tonight and for interacting so beautifully in the comments and your questions. I think that's really made it a really helpful and valuable talk tonight and interactive session. So thank you all, and thank you, Liz.
My pleasure.
Breaths, and
we've got my chamomile tea. Got to practice what I preach. So everyone, go and put your kettle on. Get a chamomile tea. If you haven't got any, order some. Yeah, I can highly recommend it. It does work.
Yeah,
and magnesium.
Yes. Magnesium, yes. Big hugs. Somebody's just saying it's bringing her to tears, and yeah, I think this is a time for tears, and it is good to let those tears come.
Yes, please. That's the thing, because anxiety is like, it's a signal, it's an emotion. Acknowledge it, Stop berating yourself because you can't deal with it. You haven't got your life in order. You haven't got your kid homeschooled by now. I mean, this is...
that voice can go.
Yeah. It is not... That voice is not providing you with useful information right now. Okay? So I had a great analogy of sort of... you have this red light voice that's just useless information. Then you have your green light, which occasionally will say, oh, that was really good. Well done. Again, not like very useful. And then there's that middle, right? That intuitive voice that will actually give you useful and helpful information on what you think and what you want and where you want to go in life. And starting to identify the difference between those voices that you get in your head can really help. Actually, it might be useful Facebook Live for another day. But yeah, just give yourself just lots of permission to, feel the experience, feel your feelings, breathe, look around. You're safe where you are right now. You're okay. Today is a new day.
Yeah, go to bed.
Yeah.
Feeling grateful about the good things. That's a good thing for children to do as well. Lovely comment from Rosie that I'd love to share. She says, you're all amazing people. Star Jumps is such a safe place and like a second home for us. Thank you so much for these videos. They give us parents so much hope and validate all our feelings during this time. And Tanya's added chamomile tea. So thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And, that yearning that we're all feeling right now to just give each other hugs, it's totally normal. And that, need to be connected it's just normal human feelings. And, this will pass. We can't say how soon, but it will. And the human race has been through harder things, and we will prevail. Side by side.
Yes, absolutely. Smiles from Amy. Thank you, Amy, and good night to everybody. It's been great. It's been lovely to see you, Liz, and
you.
See everybody else.
Yeah. So. Go watch something nice on TV. Not scary.
Yes, not news.
No.
No. Good night, everybody. Bye.
Okay. Bye.